So, hello, my name is Radvan Bahbouh. I'm a psychologist and a mathematician and a coach. And I'm the head of the Department of Psychology at Charles University, where I am responsible for several subjects: personality psychology, coaching psychology, methodology of scientific research, and managerial psychology. And I'm also a founder of QED Company. QED Company is a provider of psychological services for other companies and individuals. And the important part of our work is coaching and mentoring. I founded this company 25 years ago. I chose this title, 25 years, a look back and a vision for the future, because as we know, the European Mentoring and Coaching Council was founded in 1992, and then it was rebranded between 2001 and 2002. So it means that the existence of the European and Mentoring Coaching Council covers 20 to 30 years of coaching development. And I'd like to debrief this period of time dependently on my own experience, because I worked in this area of individual coaching and team coaching. I'd like also to link my personal findings, and some research studies with other research studies which are very important for coaching. And finally, I'd like to add my vision of further development of coaching. So when I started working at the Institute of Psychology of the Czech Academy of Sciences, and I worked in group of psychologists and physiologists and other scientists in the area of applied research. We offered research for the Czech army, and this fact determined the main topic of our research in 1993, because it was 1 year after a tragic year, 1992, because it was record number in this year of aircraft accidents. In this year, 9 pilots were killed in 6 military aircraft accidents. And in addition to this, there were some accidents of civilian aircrafts. For example, here in this picture, we can look at tragedy in Smědava. It is in Czech mountains, where in one day crashed 2 planes and 4 people were killed. What had all these accidents in common was the fact that these accidents were caused by human factor failure. More specifically, they were caused by misunderstandings and poor communication, which resulted in bad decision making. And this fact was comparable with the rest of the world, because we know that at the very beginning of 90s, and the same situation was in 70s, 80s, 65% of all aircraft accidents were caused by misunderstandings and communication, problems with communication, and all these things with consequences which were visible, for example, in decision-making process. And I witnessed in this time big change in approach towards training of pilots, because in this time was more focused soft skill part of pilot training, and it was created a very interesting system. The original name of the system was Cockpit Management System, but then it was renamed, especially in different areas than traffic and aircrafts, for example, in hospitals and other. So they use for this later crew management system. And this crew management system was inspired by so-called after-action reviews. The US Army implemented after-action reviews in the mid of 70s. Precursors for this were, for example, after combat interviews, but after-action reviews were different because these reviews were based on discussion of whole unit. And for example, for platoon, they reserved for this type of discussion 45 minutes. For battalion, it was more, 2 hours. And this discussion of the whole unit was based on several questions, powerful questions. What happened, why it happened, and how we can change it, or how we can implement this, dependently on the fact if it was something desired or something unwanted. And they transformed, this system was transformed for purpose of pilots from the army. And this system was based on 3 pillars. One pillar was the standardization of communication. The second pillar were rules for effective communication. For example, how can I express my doubts about a decision, and how we can quickly exchange information, and so on. And the third, and I think that this pillar was totally crucial for crew management system, that it is necessary debrief all flights, activities, or training courses. And this system was extremely successful, because within several years, the proportion of aircraft accidents caused by human factor decreased dramatically. We can see this drop in this graph. Before the implementation of this system, it was 65%. After, it was 28% worldwide. So it was a result of several years where we were more focused on the fact that it is important to improve our communication, and it is important to overcome some weaknesses of this communication. And it is necessary to train people in this, to model situations, problematic situations, to model their ability to discuss about different solutions in time-pressing situations. And I was lucky, or it was my stroke of good luck, that I was in this team where this system was implemented in the Czech army. And we tried to use data. We analyze large amount of data from physiological data through real records of communication from black boxes and for example subjective evaluation of communication. And what we saw was very interesting, that the majority of information we can obtain from subjective scales, that it's not necessary to be Big Brother and to record everything, that if we ask people to assess, for example, last week or last action in terms of communication, and there were different aspects of this communication, for example, quantity of communication, current quantity, frequency of communication, or optimal frequency of communication, or efficiency or quality of this communication. So if we ask people to use originally 10-point scales and then 5-point scales for the assessment of communication with other members of their team, it was very important and full of information, and it was good trigger for debriefing of, for example, last week or last month of their cooperation. But the question was how we can put all these figures in one understandable picture. And because pilots are very good in visual spatial orientation, we transform this information into landscape-like model, and we express this information in this sociomap without putting exact numbers in matrices and tables. We have very simple picture of their interconnections and communication channels. The first map we can see here is the first map ever. It was first sociomap. I created this method, and it is called sociomapping. It was the first sociomap of our experimental squadron, because our institution covered work of this experimental squadron. And marked points stand for people. Height stands for general activity, communication activity, and closeness or distances were based on the fact if I am in closer or more distant contact with other people in this team. The same sociomap, but which is based on software generated program, is here below sociomap. It is based on the same data, but original sociomap was created by hand drawing, but then we created software for this to transform all data into one or several pictures. And when we show these pictures to our pilots, we started discussion what is current state of their cooperation and communication, and what are their expectations. And then we facilitated discussion which resulted in creating action plans. I can give you different example. I can show you our program for sociomappings, and I can show you current form of sociomapping, which is so-called real-time sociomapping. You can see here. I hope you can see sociomap. I don't want to use real clients, so this sociomap is sociomap of my family. So we have 6 members in our family, my wife, me, and for children, I'm here, right side of this sociomap. And I start with the oldest daughter, Johanka. Johanka studies and lives in Maastricht, and this is the reason why she isn't in the central position of this sociomap. Because our real distance and of course our communication is not so frequent as with other members of family. And she is closer to me because we have some interjection of our interests. For example, we both are involved in the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy training in Oxford Mindfulness Center. So we have some topics and we communicate via Zoom and via phone. What is visible that the central position of our family is my wife, Martina. And I'm not so close to this central position. So she is in good contact of other children, daughters Aneška, Amalka, and Aram. And what can see here, what can I see and what can I take from this sociomap based on data we gathered 1 month ago, that it is necessary to strengthen my ties and my communication with the youngest daughter, Aneška and Aram, because they are far from me. And if I want to be informed about expectation of other people, I can create comparison with another scale. This scale is based on current communication, but we asked people also what is optimal frequency of communication. And if I use it, I can compare two different maps. Right sociomap is based on current communication in my family, and left sociomap is based on optimal communication in our family. And it's visible that especially my position is different. I am closer to my wife. I'm in this middle part of sociomap. And it means that there are some expectations from children, and I need to meet these expectations. But here, heights stand for average, which is calculated as expectations from other people, other members of team. But I can also compare this with something different. I can compare this with average, which is calculated as which is based on scales I give to other people, not expectations from other, but my expectations. And if we compare this map, I can receive this difference. So we can see the left sociomap is based on your own scales, how I and other members of our family assess the rest of this group. And it is visible that Martina, my wife, and Aneška want to communicate with other people more than they communicate with them. It is part of personality because they are very extroverted. And here in left side, my expectations is that I am less involved in communication in my family than in right. So we can compare not only current state and optimal state, but we can also compare what are your expectations and what are expectations of other people. And also we can add some other criteria. For example, the last question in our family sociomap was how I am informed about work of other members of our family. And here we can see, for example, that my son Aram is very close to my wife because they work together in one office. And it is necessary to know more about them for me, for example, and to inform them about my work. As for our daughter Amalka, we know that she's preparing for entrance examination. So it is a small case study I want to share with you, but I want to give you an example how we can work with sociomaps if we have team, that we are able to give them this picture. This is your current situation, and this is a shared mental model of optimal situation. We can compare expectations. We can give them information how other people are informed about you, and then it is only diagnostics, but it is necessary to continue with intervention. And we base on this special procedure of team coaching, and we analyze this, and we carried out a lot of experiments where we measure effect of this sociomap based team coaching. But it was very good experience with this tool, because this picture was very understandable for people, and it was good for creating space for sharing different perspectives and to plan what we want to change. For example, dependently on this map, it is necessary, for example, for me to plan some time I want to spend with my son and with my youngest daughter to strengthen our family communication. And the same is with all teams. So because we had good experience with this type of feedback, so we offered this tool for space research, and it was implemented in one experiment. It was first space experiment when we used socio-mapping. It was HUPS, and HUPS is the abbreviation where letters stand for human behavior in extended spaceflight. And it was 3-member crew, and we measure stress level, and we measured also their communication. And during this experiment, long-term experiment, it was visible that communication is trend in their communication decreased. The volume of communication was lower and lower, and at the same time stress level increased. So at the end of this experiment in January 1995, it wasn't a 3-member team, it was more 2 sub-teams or 2 parts of this, that this team, small team, was split in 1 pair and 1 individual. After experiment, if isolation was completed and they had time for recovery, it was better situation when they met together again, but not the same, for example, at the beginning of this experiment. And it is one way we can take from this warning signal that there are some risky trends, for example, decrease of communication, and these trends are able to predict that there are higher and higher risk of misunderstandings or conflicts. So we used this repeatedly in other space research experiments. In these experiments, of course, it wasn't about physical modeling of this situation, but people lived in a model of spaceship, and they spend a lot, so many days together, and we asked them repeatedly how they assess communication and cooperation with other people, and it was opportunity to communicate or to debrief what they can improve, and to be aware of their stress, for example. So it was a nice occasion for debrief and for ability to capture ongoing changes. The longest experiment so far was Mars 500, and it was 520 days where 6 members, we can look at them in this picture, spent time together, and they worked on some experiments there, and we were able to ask them how they assess communication with 5 other members of this team, with the rest of this team, and also with control center. It is CC. We can see this this point there in the right part of this sociomap, and we can see all movement. Movement is caused by changes of communication. For example, if 4 and 2 worked together, and it was necessary to be in closer contact. They were together here, and for example, we can see other changes and changes in volume of communication. It is visible in this color scale. Red color means a high level of communication, then yellow, green, and blue one. And we can see change now in the middle of this experiment, that after a high level of communication, we can see red color, and red color means high numbers in this current communication frequency. We can see that now this team is split in two sub teams, and it was caused normally it is something strange, and we need to know about this, and we need to it is necessary to investigate this. But in this situation, it was caused by landing on Mars, so it was simulation of landing on Mars. So if we look at trend, if we look at this sociomap, we are able to find some changes, and we can encourage people in this team to discuss if it is necessary to change, and how they can overcome some weaknesses of their cooperation. So it was used in this experiment, and also it is used, for example, now it is series of experiments with named Sirius, and for example, Sirius 2021. And it is good tool for ongoing debrief of this team. What is available here and what we can use for space crew, we can use on Earth. And we started with using this type of debrief based on this picture, for example, in Czech Army, and then later we started to use it for top management team. But independently on the fact, if we use at the beginning sociomap or other tools, the most important and effective part of this intervention was debrief, not sociomap, but the debrief after action review. It was discussion about things which happened, and what we can take from them, and how we can change our next attempts. It is interesting because in 90s I started my work also in psychotherapy. I started my work as a psychotherapist, and yeah, of course, this is one book where we put a lot of research studies. It was published 11 years ago, and then we publish a lot of other books about all these experiments. For example, from this year, I am co-author of this Mars exploration book. But what I want to share is that there were different moments or perspectives in individual work, of course, but what we use there is also one specific form of debrief. In 90s was recommended to use for debrief of traumatic experiences, so-called critical stress incident debrief. And I compared the efficiency of this critical stress incident debrief with, for example, debrief in individual coaching, because at the same time I had clients of, I had coaches, and I have clients in psychotherapy, and it was a big difference, because in individual coaching, debrief worked very well, but in critical or crisis management, sometimes it was debrief caused something like repeating painful experience, and sometimes it worked, and sometimes I had doubts if it is the best way we can treat people after trauma. And later this fact was proved by large-scale experiments, randomized experiments with different type of treatment. And these experiments are summed up here in this book from Timothy Wilson with name Redirect. And the main takeaway from this book and from these experiments was critical debrief for people after trauma is not the best way we can treat them, because, and it was very surprising for me, because the incidence of post-traumatic stress disorder increased after critical debrief. So we had good intention, but this treatment were counterproductive very often. What was behind this? It was the fact that if we have painful experience and if we need to analyze this in details, it is like repeating this painful experience and also framing them and putting them in our memory. And it's something different than our than using our ego defense mechanisms. And sometimes it's good not to be so focused on traumatic part of this experience. But another takeaway from these experiments was interesting, because it was visible that there is one best way, the remedy of the first choice, and it is one question. If I wait, for example, 4 weeks after trauma, and if I ask people not, please describe me this situation in details. If I ask them, please, can you say what do you change in your life after this experience? It was very helpful. Not to focus on our experience, on our emotions, but how I am able to use them and transform them for me. Because part of people after traumatic experiences is able to reach something which is named post-traumatic development, personal development. But it is good if I take this experience as lesson learned, and if I'm able to gain something from them. It is similar to kintsugi. Kintsugi is a very interesting principle or Japanese art of repairing broken pottery. And kintsugi, if we have pottery after kintsugi, it's more beautiful than pottery before kintsugi. And the same is with our personality. If we are able to take something from traumatic situation, and if we are able to think how I can implement this experience in my life, in the rest of my life, it is more helpful perspective. It is very important reframing. All these things led me to creating a schema for debrief, and this schema I used with clients in psychotherapy, but I used the same schema for individual clients in coaching and team coaching. And I published this this form or this procedure in this book 11 years ago, and it was here. It is very simple. Because if we want to take something from our experience, if we want to transform our experience in lesson learned, it is necessary to go again through our experience. But it is necessary to ask powerful questions. And it is necessary to have some procedure for this. And we can start because our we have two different dimensions we can use for classification of our experience or of parts of our experience. One is a habitualness. If it is something normal for us, or we experience something totally different, unusual and unique, so it is one thing. It is new or usual, what I experienced. And another part is the nature of this experience. Did I experience something good? Was it helpful? Was it wanted, desirable, pleasant? Or was it something I want to avoid next time? Something unwanted and unhelpful. So this is one dimension. And the second dimension, the nature, we mark this experience with by plus for pleasant experience, and delta, Greek delta sign for undesirable, instead of minus, because we are more focused on next steps. So how I want to use it for next change, not how I can frame my bad experience, but what I can take from it for next steps and for next days. So these dimensions create a field or matrix or a sieve we can use for the capturing of details and findings from our experience. It's up to us if we use this type of analysis for the activity we want to develop, or for a time we want to make the most of, or for anchoring our experience in our memory. It's up to us if it is debrief of last training or it is debrief of last week. But it is good to start from new and desirable things. And we can ask here in this part of self-coaching, because it is very easy to remember and effective method of self-coaching and team coaching and coaching. So we can start with questions. For example, what went better than usual, and where it went better than usual, what made me happy in this experience, where I did feel, did I feel at highest level of energy, what was the most powerful moment for me in this experience. So it is about identification of ups, of moments, of highlights of this experience, which are above average. And then we can think why I have this experience, what was in my mind, or what are my emotions at this moment, and my behavior. So you know this probably from psychotherapy, ABC: emotions, affectivity, B, behavior, and C, cognitive level of assessment. And then after this investigation, we can think, how can I implement this good experience in my next attempt, in my next training, in my next week. So after starting with this, and it is good to start with this because we are attracted to new things, and it is good for our energy, because if we start with positive side of our experience, it is better for motivation. So then we are prepared to to focus on different part of our experience. What was the most problematic moment for me, and where I felt worse than usually, or for example, then how can I react differently next time? So after identification of our downs, so there are ups and downs. After our downs, I can think, how can I change my behavior or my thinking next time? And we are able to create alternative scenarios for similar situation we can meet in the next days. So after this, after thinking about ways we can avoid the same experience or same critical point of my experience, we are able to focus on less visible part of our experience, what is here constantly. Because there are some phenomena which are permanently here, and we are not aware of them because they are here, but it is necessary to do something with them. If, for example, if I experience repeatedly some problematic patterns of my behavior, it's not about accepting them, but it's not so easy to avoid them at once. So it's necessary to plan, to create action plan, and to try step by step to change them. So it's good to be aware of, to face our repeating problematic patterns, and to try to change them. And also, and this is the last part of this discussion or monologue, I can think about things and parts of my experience which are here constantly, and which are good, because we tend to neglect this this fact that, for example, we are healthy, and it's a pity, because it's good for our motivation, for our energy. It is good to confirm things which go well repeatedly. So the last part of this is confirmation. And again, I can ask, do I have the same good experience as in previous attempts, for example? And it's part of our self-confidence, for example. So we can look at this procedure in terms of dimension: desirable and habitual, new and usual. We can also think about questions, because all these things are based on questions, and we can think about level of cognitive, what I can take, what are my discoveries from this, or emotions, so where I felt the happiest moment of my experience, and also my behavior, what was my reaction, and if I want to change my reaction. But one thing which is there, and which is similar as, for example, in after action debrief, is that one is identification of some powerful moments, some ups and downs, some highlights, investigation, to go in detail, and to ask, for example, what was in your mind, and do you have some explanation for this? Sometimes we can ask why, but not so often. It's more about finding some triggers for this situation, and to explore around this moment. But then the most important part is, how can I use in next steps? How can I use these findings in my life? So it's implementation. So it was the same question as, for example, in this example of the treatment of traumatized people. What can I change in do you change something in your life after this debrief? And at this moment, debrief transforms in briefing for next attempts, and we are motivated to try it again differently in problematic parts and in the same way if we were happy about something. So we have a lot of proofs that debriefs work, and one is that, for example, after more than 25, when we started, 25 years of using this method in Czech army, especially debriefs which are based on sociomap, we received with my colleague who is responsible for the implementation of these debriefs in the Czech army award. We received medal of merit, but this proof is proof in real life. Another thing is if we want to prove something scientifically. And I want to remind you here this model of scientific proofs which have different impact and different level. The basis of this pyramid is based on individual case studies or case series, and we have a lot of case studies. We describe them in books and articles, but then we need to have some correlation studies, and better type of scientific proof is randomized experiment, and we carried out some experiments. For example, my colleague in the Department of Psychology proved in randomized experiment that teams with whom we use debrief based on social mapping are more effective, and their performance is higher. But the most valuable and fruitful type of scientific proof is so-called meta-analysis. If we gather all randomized experiments together, and if we create something like super experiment, can we say that debrief is valuable technique or procedure of coaching, individual coaching and team coaching? And I want to share one important article from Tannenbaum and Kerasoli. It was a very important question for coaches. Do team and individual debrief enhance performance? And it was meta-analytical approach. So they gathered a lot of experiments. We can find it here in abstract that it was based on 2,136 people in different experiments. And what they found out is if you start to use debrief individually, or if you start to debrief with team, your average change in your performance in different areas of measurement, because for different teams we have different key performance indicators. For example, for creative teams we have number of creative ideas. For business teams we have business results. For some teams it is decrease of some failures or misunderstandings or complaints of our clients. So we have different areas with different KPIs. But if we use these specific KPIs for the measurement of our performance, we can expect that after implementation of debrief, we can increase in our performance 25%. It is average change in our performance. I think it is one of the best proofs ever for coaching based on debrief of my experience and preparing for next experience. So I want to recommend this article and books which are based on similar studies. For example, you can find this author Tannenbaum. So I was glad when I read this, because a meta-analytical proof is more than our experiments. And we have a lot of experiments, but I think that it is good to know that our way is in good direction. And I think that it is an example what is important for coaching in future. I think it is very important for coaching in the future to base our procedures, our powerful questions on scientific proofs, to create something we can name evidence-based coaching. Because if we have good proofs, we can expand, we can use coaching in different areas, because we know that we can help people, and especially for people who are not fans of coaching, it is very important to give them these proofs, because it's not time-consuming method. Normally, and it is in this article, debrief is something where we spend 30 minutes or 40 minutes. It's not hours and hours and days and days. It's part of our coaching session, for example. So for the advertisement of coaching, it is important, but for coaching itself, it is important to be critical and to test if our methods and procedures are good for our clients. And this is part of my vision of the future, coaching as a science, coaching as a method which is connected with the modern technologies. And I hope that coaching will be part, team self-coaching will be part of our flight to Mars. And it is fine that probably we can find a small contribution of coaching in especially in the preparation of team for this flight. And it is very important that these issues, human factor issues and communication, are focused now in research in space research, but not only in space research, because what is important that we can use all these tools in our normal life, and we can start to debrief not long flights, but we can start to debrief what is around us. And I think that debrief is a good way for enhancing our mindfulness, being able to focus, to be mindful of nice details, being aware of our emotions. And all these things are very important for the enhancement of our life. And what I'm happy about in coaching is that it's not only science, it's not only modern technologies, it's also old wisdom, because, for example, mindfulness is here for centuries, and it is the art. And this combination of science and art is a very nice thing. We appreciate it in our coaching word. So I hope that you can take something from this presentation, and I hope that you are happy about the fact that we work with something which is the art, what is the art and what is as well science. Thank you for your attention, and see you later. We will we will see in our Congress or after this Congress. Have a nice day. Bye.